The leader is truly and ultimately responsible for everything. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. Leadership requires belief in the mission and unyielding perseverance to achieve victory, particularly when doubters question whether victory is even possible. Ego clouds and disrupts everything: the planning process, the ability to take good advice, and the ability to accept constructive criticism. Cover and move. Simple, yet perhaps the most powerful act and mindset that enables a team to work effectively and efficiently together. Simplifying as much as possible is crucial to success. When plans and orders are too complicated, people may not understand them. Prioritizing efforts isn't just about picking the right solutions for the problems that need to be solved. It's about the sequencing of decisions and activities. Leaders must always operate with the understanding that they are part of something greater than themselves and their own personal interests. Leadership isn't one person leading a team. It is a group of leaders working together up and down the chain of command to lead. Leadership doesn't just happen when things are going well. Leadership happens when things go bad. If your ego starts to inflate, you've got to get that thing in check and under control. A good leader does not get bogged down in the minutiae of a tactical problem at the expense of strategic success. Take ownership of everything in your world, the good and the bad. Take ownership of your mistakes, your shortfalls, your problems, and the solutions that will solve those problems. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. The test is not a complex one. When the alarm goes off, do you get up out of bed, or do you lie there in comfort and fall back to sleep? Relax. Look around. Make a call. Without a team, a group of individuals working to accomplish a mission, there can be no leadership. Leading people is the most challenging and therefore the most gratifying undertaking of all human endeavors. A leader must lead but also be ready to follow. Implementing extreme ownership requires checking your ego and operating with a high degree of humility. Admitting mistakes, taking ownership, and developing a plan to overcome challenges are integral to any successful team. Discipline equals freedom. Leadership is the single greatest factor in any team's performance. Good leaders don't make excuses. Instead, they figure out a way to get it done. The leader must own everything in his or her world. There is no one else to blame. The goal of all leaders should be to work themselves out of a job. Leadership is not a talent or a gift. It's a choice. It's not complex, but it's very hard. Leadership is primarily a people business. Leadership is simple, but not easy. Leadership isn't a one-size-fits-all. Leadership requires finding the equilibrium in the dichotomy of many seemingly contradictory qualities. Don't ask your leader what you should do. Tell them what you're going to do. In chaotic, dynamic, and rapidly changing environments, leaders at all levels must be empowered to make decisions. On any team, in any organization, all responsibility for success and failure rests with the leader. The leader must own everything in his or her world. There is no one else to blame. With a team depending on you, quitting is not an option. Ownership is about extreme responsibility, taking responsibility for yourself and for those around you. Leadership requires balance. Leaders should never be satisfied. They must always strive to improve. The leader must acknowledge mistakes and admit failures, take ownership of them, and develop a plan to win. Get the team on board. Explain why the task is necessary, why it's important, and what the strategic end state is. For leaders, the humility to admit and own mistakes and develop a plan to overcome them is essential to success. To admit your mistakes is to show you have learned from them and are willing to improve. To claim you have not made mistakes is either a lie or a sign of delusion. True leaders understand the importance of balance and the necessity to adapt to the mission and the needs of the team. A good leader must be willing to take the blame and accept the consequences of failure. Ownership requires a keen sense of reality. To deny reality is to deny the truth. Leadership is the art of getting people to want to do what must be done. There are leaders, and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or influence. Those who lead inspire us. The ability to detach from a situation is a critical leadership skill. People are not robots. They feel, they fear, they experience pain and stress, they fail. It is the job of the leader to push them beyond their normal capacity while maintaining their will to fight and to win. The more a leader can admit their mistakes, the faster they can learn from them. Every leader must walk a fine line. That's what makes leadership so challenging. Leading up the chain takes much more savvy and skill than leading down the chain. When setting expectations, no matter what has been said or written, if substandard performance is accepted and no one is held accountable, if there are no consequences, that poor performance becomes the new standard. There is no 100 right solution. The picture is always changing. Information is consistently inaccurate, incomplete, and uncertain. The immediate recognition that a leader must take ownership of failures and mistakes was a critical part of our transformation into a high-performance team. Don't be that guy. Don't get upset at your people for not meeting the standards that you failed to clearly communicate to them. Teams need a forcing function to get the team leader to lead. When leaders receive an order that they themselves question, it is crucial that they ask questions up the chain in order to clarify the strategic mission. The leader must demonstrate through actions that mistakes and failures by any members of the team are accepted and that they are a necessary part of progress. One of the key qualities a leader must possess is the ability to detach from the chaos, mayhem, and emotions in the short term and make good, clear decisions based on what is actually happening. Any team, in any organization, all responsibility for success and failure rests with the leader. The leader must own everything in his or her world. A leader must be attentive to details, but not obsessed with them. When personal agendas become more important than the team and the overarching mission's success, performance suffers and failure ensues. Leaders must always choose the hard right over the easy wrong. In order to convince and inspire others to follow and accomplish a mission, a leader must be a true believer in the mission. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. The most fundamental and important truths at the heart of extreme ownership: there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. Leaders must determine the highest priority task and execute. When overwhelmed, fall back upon this principle, prioritize and execute. When leaders who epitomize extreme ownership drive their teams to achieve a higher standard of performance, they must recognize that when it comes to standards, as a leader, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. A broad and ambiguous mission results in lack of focus, ineffective execution, and mission creep. Check the ego. Implementing extreme ownership requires checking your ego and operating with a high degree of humility. When subordinates aren't doing what they should, leaders that exercise extreme ownership cannot blame the subordinates. They must first look in the mirror at themselves. The goal of all leaders should be to work themselves out of a job. When mentored and developed correctly, The junior leader can eventually replace the senior leader, allowing the senior leader to move on to the next level of leadership. The leader must own everything in his or her world. There is no one else to blame. Leadership is simple but not easy. Leadership requires finding the equilibrium in the dichotomy of many seemingly contradictory qualities between one extreme and another. The simple recognition of this is one of the most powerful tools a leader has. Leadership isn't one person leading a team. It is a group of leaders working together up and down the chain of command to lead. Whether a team succeeds or fails is all up to the leader. The leader's attitude sets the tone for the entire team. If your team isn't doing what you need them to do, look in the mirror first and figure out what you can do to better enable this. Overcome your fears. Be courageous. Be bold. Leaders must lean on the frontline leaders within their team, passing on the majority of the responsibility to those leaders. As a leader, if you are down in the weeds, planning the details with your guys, you will have the same perspective as them, which adds little value. Trust is not blindly given. It must be built over time. Situations will sometimes require that the boss walk away from a problem and let junior leaders solve it, even if the boss knows he might solve it more efficiently. With the right leadership, the most seemingly hopeless teams can turn themselves around. Your men are your weapons. In the day-to-day grind, it's easy to forget that the tools of your trade are human beings with emotions. It is essential to maintain an operational relationship with your troops, but you cannot get too close to your subordinates. On the battlefield, countless problems compound in a snowball effect, every challenge complex in its own right, each demanding attention. But a leader must remain calm and make the best decisions possible. Leadership at every level is the most important factor in whether a team succeeds or fails. A good leader is not a person who just gives orders, but a person who, in order to accomplish the mission, is willing to get down and dirty. Leadership is about control. It's about balance. The best leaders understand the motivations of their team members and know their people, their lives and their dreams. The goal of all leaders should be to work themselves out of a job. When personal agendas become more important than the team and the overarching mission's success, performance suffers and failure ensues. Without a team, a group of individuals working to accomplish a mission, there can be no leadership. Don't ask your leader what you should do. Tell them what you are going to do. With any chain of command, the leadership must believe in the mission. A leader who exercises extreme ownership does not take credit for his or her team's successes, but bestows that honor upon his subordinate leaders and team members. Extreme ownership requires leaders to look at an organization's problems through the objective lens of reality, without emotional attachment to agendas or plans. Leadership is not a talent or a gift. It's a choice. It's not complex, but it's very hard. Leaders must always operate with the understanding that they are part of something greater than themselves and their own personal interests. A leader must lead, but also be ready to follow.